Good morning, sixth grade. So I told you yesterday after we went through lesson 1, I was going to go through some of the lesson resources with you. So let's go ahead and get started with those. All right, so let's take a closer look at the Great Depression. So in this photograph is a government soup kitchen during the Great Depression. It shows jobless, poverty-stricken Americans receiving a free meal. The WPA, or Works Progress Administration, was a part of the government's relief effort during the Great Depression. Aside from running soup kitchens, the WPA also set up numerous work programs and paid for the creation of pieces of public art. Next, photographer Dorothea Lange took this famous photo of a Depression-era migrant family. The photo was part of a series entitled Migrant Mother. The woman, named Florence Owens Thompson, had 7 children. Her children had to hunt birds in order to survive. The mother was only 32 years old when Lange took this picture. The family lived in an open tent, vulnerable to the weather. This photo, perhaps, is more than any other come to symbolize the hardships Americans had to endure during the Great Depression. In this photo, hundreds of hungry, jobless men are lining up for a free dinner in New York City in 1932. These breadline scenes became common during the Great Depression. I'm just going to zoom in on that a little bit for you. And this photo shows a shanty town, or temporary camp, made by people left jobless or homeless during the Great Depression. Some people even lived in tents instead of shacks made from scrap metals. Such makeshift camps were bitterly called Hoovervilles, after President Herbert Hoover. Hoover did little to help the jobless population. Conditions in these camps were often dirty and dangerous. All right, continue on with talking about President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was president from he was born 1882, died 1945. He was elected 4 times. He was the only U.S. president to have that distinction. The former New York governor led the United States during both the Great Depression and World War II. His leadership reassured Americans during some of the darkest times in U.S. history. Roosevelt suffered from the crippling disease of polio. However, his illness did not keep him from performing the duties of his office. Roosevelt died shortly into his 4th term. Roosevelt became president 3 years after the Great Depression began. He promised a New Deal for the average American. His New Deal government programs helped pull the nation out of the Great Depression and change the country in ways that are still felt today. Once in the White House, Roosevelt set to work providing help for the jobless and poverty-stricken by proposing new laws and creating new government agencies. This extremely active period became known as the 100 Days. Franklin D. Roosevelt, continuing, New Deal programs such as the WPA, or the Works Progress Administration, and CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, provided aid and jobs for many. Public art campaigns promoted these and had similar government programs, shown here as a WPA poster. Under Roosevelt, Congress also established the NRA, which is the National Recovery Administration, with the authority to regulate wages, working hours, and the use of child labor. The FDIC, or the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, also started at this time. It insured the money kept in banks in order to prevent future losses. In 1905, Franklin D. Roosevelt married Anna Eleanor Roosevelt, his distant cousin. When her husband became president, Eleanor Roosevelt won the hearts of people with her honesty, practicality, and caring nature. Eleanor Roosevelt had an active public life. She traveled, held press conferences, gave speeches and radio broadcasts, and wrote dozens of books for a newspaper column. She fought for fair treatment for women, youth, and African Americans. She supported the arts and raised money for charities. During the New Deal, Eleanor Roosevelt often traveled to see how well the president's programs were working. During World War II, she made the White House follow the same programs as the American people followed, such as rationing food, sending her sons to fight, and planting a victory garden. So this is Eleanor Roosevelt as she gathers with U.S. soldiers. One more little snippet here. It says, during the Great Depression, President Franklin D. Roosevelt would often address the nation on the radio. His fireside chats became the beacon of hope for many suffering Americans. Let's continue talking with Italian dictator Benito Mussolini. Started out as a reformer in Italy, and because of his experiences in World War I, he wanted to restore Italy to its past glory. So if we click on his picture here, a little more information. Benito Mussolini was the youngest prime minister in Italian history. At first, many Italians welcomed the stability he and his fascist party brought to the country. This changed, however, as his rule became stricter and more violent. Corrupt political figures persecuted many Italians whom they regarded as political enemies. Fascism is a form of extremism in which violent followers of a popular leader display extreme nationalism or intolerance of others. As Italy drew closer to Europe's other rising fascist power, Nazi Germany, Mussolini passed racist laws depriving Jewish Italians of their property and rights. Italy eventually entered World War II to fight alongside its ally Germany. Mussolini was shot and killed while trying to sneak out of Italy in 1945. Italians throughout the country celebrated his death. Continuing on, we have Adolf Hitler, who had been corporal in World War I, led the Nazi Party to power in Germany. So let's go ahead and take a closer look and some more information here. Adolf Hitler was born in Austria in 1889. As a young man, he dreamed of becoming an artist. After World War I, his speaking skills helped him rise through the ranks of the German Workers' Party in Munich. This party later changed its name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the NSDAP, whose members became known as Nazis for short. Nazis copied Mussolini's fascist methods. After becoming Chancellor of Germany in 1933, Hitler insisted on being called the leader in German, which is Der Führer. Soon, he ruled as a totalitarian dictator. He believed that Aryan or Northern European white people were superior or master race who were entitled to rule the world. Hitler reserved his strongest hatred for the Jewish people, many of whom lived in Germany and in Eastern Europe. As a young man, while in prison for treason, he wrote the book Mein Kampf, meaning My Struggle. Mein Kampf called for persecution against the Jews, whom Hitler believed had too much influence over German society. The fight must be a bloody process, he wrote. This was a chilling prediction of what would soon become genocide. Hitler used the Jews as a political scapegoat, or a group to blame for all of Germany's problems. Gradually, Jews' rights were taken away, and eventually they were sent by the millions to death camps. When Hitler ruled Germany, Mein Kampf became the guidebook of the Nazi Party. What followed was the persecution, enslavement, and murder of about 6 million Jews and several million other so-called inferior groups. Today, the book is banned in Germany. In 2010, the book was banned also in Russia, out of fear of a Nazi party farming there. However, it still exists in many different languages worldwide. Mostly, the book is read as a historical document. All right, so another picture shown here is formal parades that showcase the goose step marching style of Nazi troops. And that's that straight leg marching style. You can kind of see it here on the picture. All right, another one of these dictator leaders. So we had Mussolini, we had Hitler, and now we have Joseph Stalin. And you can see him pictured here. Okay, and it says Joseph Stalin built the Soviet Union into a superpower. At the same time, however, he destroyed the freedom of the Soviet people. All right, moving on to talk about Japan a little bit. It says Japan conquered territory throughout East Asia to gain land and natural resources.
In the decades before World War II, Japan invaded several neighboring countries and added territory to its borders. By the time of the war, Japan controlled the largest territory in its history.
All right, so if we click on this, you can see where Japan is at. So you can see it's located right here. Okay, then territory added by 1910. So you can see this little bit of territory in Korea. All right, and down here on this island. Then territory added by 1933. Adds in Manchuria here. And then territory added by 1941. You can see all of this territory that Japan had conquered to try to add to get land and get resources for itself. Okay, and like we just saw on the map, it says Japan's army invaded Manchuria in 1931 and was able to control major cities in that country. So we'll take a look at these pictures and get a little more information here. So for centuries, different dynasties had ruled Japan. Emperors controlled military rulers who in turn commanded their own private armies. Common people worked for the nobles under a feudal system. At the beginning of the 1900s, Japan was still largely isolated from the rest of the world. Japan entered a period of rapid industrial growth, causing the warrior system to change. Japanese wealth and power increased. However, the nation encountered economic problems during the Great Depression. These problems increased militarism in Japanese society. Militarism meant the desire for power and the creation or restoration of an empire. In the 1930s, Japan launched devastating attacks against China. A policy of expansionism meant seizing more and more territory from many of its neighbors. By the 1930s and 40s, Japan had entered into worldwide military conflicts. All right, so that's where we're going to leave off at today. If you do want to log into your textbook website, there is a crossword puzzle game that you can play. It's pretty fun. It kind of goes over the lesson. So if you look at it, you can get timed or not timed. And then you will fill in the blanks here and then just type them into the boxes here. If you're a little unsure, there is a word list that you can click on. And it tells you the words that would be used. So if I read, let's say read number 5 across, it says Stalin's opponents were killed or sent to blank camps. And if I look at my word list, if I don't know, I can kind of pick it out from there. Or I could just type in prison camps. And then once you fill all the blanks in, you can always check your answers and it'll tell you what you got correct or incorrect up here. So kind of a fun little game to play. So actually, how about when you finish this Ed Puzzle, you can go ahead and get on and I want you to try the game here.